Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessica. Today I am going to talk about my tips for panning a palette. As some of you know, I panned the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette last year and the year before that. It took me like 2 full years, and right now I'm panning a little MAC quad. And yeah, I'm not an expert on it, but I did finish a palette from start to finish, and yeah, I think that has there's some accomplishment in that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and give you some tips on like how to choose a palette for Pan That Palette, what can make a successful Pan That Palette. First of all, I want to talk about if everyone should pan a palette. I think that everyone should attempt to pan a palette at least once. I think that it's a practical thing to do in terms of figuring out how long a palette actually takes to use up. If you are someone who only owns one palette though, and you don't have a problem with buying lots of palettes, you're probably technically already panning a palette and you don't really need to do that. But I think people with larger collections and who want to scale back and like actually see how far their makeup can last them or how long their makeup can last them, it would be a wise thing to do. And with that, panning a palette doesn't necessarily mean starting from brand new to using every single bit of product up. It can just be hitting pan on everything. It can be using it like one palette for 1 month and seeing how that feels. Yeah, everyone's going to be a little bit different with their rules and everything, but if you do want to pan a palette from start to finish, there are a few things that I have in regards to picking a palette as to what I feel is good things to look for. Okay, so first thing, how to pick a palette. I always say pan what you like. Don't be trying to pan a blue eyeshadow when you don't ever use blue eyeshadow. That's probably not wise. You're gonna regret it, you're gonna hate it, you're not gonna want to finish it, you're not gonna want to pick it up. With that, I would pan neutrals if you mainly wear neutrals. I would pan colors if you mainly wear bright colors or bolder colors. And with that, I would also try and find a palette that has a little bit of both. If you like to play around, you're want to experiment a little bit, I think that that is a good way to push you a little bit outside your comfort zone. Like for instance, the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette has lots of warm tone neutrals with like the oranges, and although an orange would be really bright in there, I think Real Gar is very bright, but it also has like some nice transition shades. However, it also had a bunch of pinks in there that personally I wasn't sure if I was comfortable enough to pan those, but I wanted to push myself out because I knew I kind of liked that color, but I just didn't know if I would get too tired of it. Spoiler alert for that, I actually, or not really spoiler alert, but through the experience I actually found out that I really like the pink cranberry shades on me, and I'm really liked panning it, and those were actually shades that I missed the most. And on top of that, another thing is formula. So our Too Faced palettes are very hardly pressed, and so those will take a lot longer. I knew going into it, since it was my first time, the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette had a softer formula, a lot more kick up, so I knew that it would be a little bit easier to be successful in that palette. And yet, even then, it took me 2 years to pan that palette. The next thing you want to keep in mind is practicality. I wanted to pick a palette that had mattes and shimmers. I think it's wise to do that depending on, I mean, if you're someone who does an all shimmer look all the time, try and go maybe for panning lots of shimmers versus lots of mattes. And also something that has transition shades. If you're someone who likes transition shades, find something with lots of different kinds of transition shades in there. For instance, I personally would never pan a rainbow palette with all shimmer shades because I know I like my transition shade. It's just, that would be like basically for me panning one eyeshadow at a time, and that would be a lot for me personally. Also, I also have here everyday shades, like I already said, shades that you work with every day. If you wear colorful eyeshadow every single day, then obviously that would be the smarter choice for you, because I'm sure bronze or a gold might be a little too tiring for you. It might get boring at some point. And also keeping in mind the size of the palette and each individual shade. Like Juvia's Place, I know that they have, I think, like double the amount of product. Maybe not what you want to do for a pan that palette, because there is so much product in there. Smaller pans are usually easier to get through. It feels like you're accomplishing more, or at least regular size pans. It feels like you're accomplishing more when you finish a shadow, because you're finishing a shadow. You don't have to work with that shade ever again if you don't like, unless you have, I guess, multiple of that shade in your collection. But beyond that, like, you know, you get a sense of accomplishment, one shade done, and it feels better. Size also could be not just like the amount of product in a single pan, but also the size of the palette. A 35 pan eyeshadow palette is also going to take a lot longer than a quad. Like for me, last year I did the Anastasia Beverly Hills 14 shades. That took me 2 years, so this year I wanted to make sure that I wasn't spending as much time on a single palette, so I chose a quad to pan this year, and hopefully, fingers crossed, won't take as long as the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. And with that, this year I also chose one that I went a little different. It's mainly neutral shades and only shimmer shades. However, there's only 4 shades, so I feel like it's a little bit easier. And again, neutral shades, a lot easier as well. Strategies while panning. Okay, so I think, so when I was younger and I didn't like to eat my vegetables at dinner time, I always ate those first because I knew I had to eat them so I could save the best for last. That's how I also pan. I start with my shades that I feel like I might grow a little bit more tired of, or at least like a darker shade I know is going to take longer because I'm not going to be smoking it out all over the eye more than likely. I'll probably just use a little bit on, you know, the inner and outer corners of my eye. So I'm going to make sure I'm dipping into that shade from the very beginning. With my Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette, I decided to pan Cypress Umber, which is the dark brown shade. Right away I knew I wanted to make sure I had that in every look that I tried to do right away. And I think it's also smart to do that because eventually you are going to get tired of this palette, and if you save your best shades for last, the shades that you're so excited to dip into on the latter half of the panning, it'll make you still want to be using that palette that much more. Also, picking out the challenging colors with like the pops of color, starting to pan those sooner as well, I think is also helpful. Like for me, I wasn't sure if those cranberry shades that were in that Anastasia Beverly Hills palette I didn't know if I was going to like them, or I thought maybe I would get really tired of them really quickly. I ended up loving them, and I actually really missed using them after a while, but I decided to use those ones first because, and mind you, you probably will get tired of a look. At the end of that, I was a little bit tired and I wanted to change things out. However, I do know I ended up missing them as well towards the end. But yeah, I would definitely recommend the challenging colors, the pops of color, the darker colors, trying to tackle those ones first, because when you're tired of the palette, at the end you want it to go smoother. I would definitely, like I said, recommend jumping over the hurdles first so that way it's a little bit easier towards the end. My next tip is to create a look. So Amber F actually does this every single month. She does a monthly makeup basket, I believe, and she'll talk about what look she's panning. I'm going to go ahead and link her channel down below. Go to her. She's been doing this forever. I believe she's the one that, I think she's the one that's like credited that started the whole panning that palette thing. So yeah, she has lots of back stock of footage to go look through if you're looking for inspiration. But yes, creating a look is really vital and important, and panning that look, I think, is very helpful as well. It's a way for you to know when you get up in the morning, you're going to wear that look. It's not going to be, you're not deciding what should I dip into next, because eventually you're probably going to get a little bit tired of the palette anyways, and you're going to run out of creative looks to, at least what they feel like as creative looks, because they're no longer creative, it's going to be routine. Having a go-to is really important, and panning that, not necessarily panning that from start to finish. You will get tired of a look, and I'm sure you'll use up some of the shadows sooner rather than later, and so things are going to have to change either way, but maybe panning a look for a month and then switching on to something else. That way maybe what you could do is, if there are 2 pops of color in that palette that you're trying to get over that hump first, you pan one look for a month and then the next pop color for the next month. And that way you're switching things up and things feel a little bit different. The next tip I have, which helped me out so much, was taking breaks and scheduling them. So in the very beginning, I was using my Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette every day, and then I think I used it every day for like a month, and then after that I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and schedule a week break within each month. Some people will do weekends. It's totally up to you what your schedule is, but for me, I was only wearing my eyeshadow palette like Monday through Friday, and I really was trying not to wear makeup on the weekends at that time, so it didn't make sense for me to take weekends off because I was already taking them off because I wasn't wearing makeup in general. So I had a week off from my palette to go ahead and play with other things, and that was really helpful. I think that prolonged my panning a little bit, which was fine with me because I didn't want to get tired of it. And yeah, and then throughout the rest of the panning, I made sure to take a couple days off. I started incorporating other projects and other palettes to bring in that I wanted to pan as well. So, or like eyeshadows that I wanted to pan as well. So I was taking a couple days off every now and then, or I was trying to have another type of shadow be like the star of the look, and then using the mattes to help create a look around that. So I was still using the palette, but not having to have the main focal point in that palette be the eyeshadows that were in the palette, if that makes sense. Oh my gosh, I'm tripping over my words, but hopefully y'all get it. And then towards the end, I just wanted to get done with it, so I was just using it day in and day out, and I had mainly boring shades left, so I was fine with it. It was nice and easy. I was definitely getting tired of it, but whatever, I was just getting over the very hump, and so yeah. But I think scheduling breaks from the very beginning is important. It's allowing yourself time to off of the palette, so hopefully you come back with fresh eyes. And however, I think it's important, every now and then I would not take those breaks. I would feel like just wanting to live in that palette, and I think listening to yourself at the time is important as well. And know that you're going to be going through ups and downs, and you're going to love the palette one day, and the next day you're going to want to throw it against the wall and never see it again, ever. But you're going to go up and down, ups and downs. You're going to have growth spurts within the palette as well. You're probably going to see one shade and absolutely hate it, and then end up loving it because you found a way to use it, which is the beauty, I think, of having that palette, having a discipline of like making yourself use a look over and over again, or like use a certain shadow and trying to find ways to incorporate it in your routine in a way that fits a look that you want, is really cool, especially whenever it works out. It's really, really nice to know that occurred, that you like learned something either about yourself, about the palette, about the formula, whatever it is, you learn something within that palette just by sticking with it. The next thing is setting goals. So for me, I didn't necessarily set goals because I knew I just wanted to finish it. So I guess that is a goal, but I didn't have a time limit. I wasn't trying to rush it through. I just said, I'm going to see how long this takes, and I'm going to do it from start to finish, and we'll see. And I'm going to use it majority of the time I'm doing makeup, which I did. Some people will not want to finish it. Some people will just want to hit pan on it. Some people, you're only going to try and use it for a month, 2 months, and see what progress you can make. And yeah, but for me, I wanted to finish it. Also, what I did is with my check-ins is I did predictions, because at some point I was no longer, there was no point in me setting goals because I was using the palette every day, and so it was just a matter of when I was able to use it up, not how fast I could use it up. So I just predicted, I said, okay, I'm going to pan this look, and I'm going to predict that this time will be done. And it was interesting to see those either come true or not true, and really I felt like no pressure, especially with calling predictions versus goals, because I knew it wasn't something that I was like failing at or not able to do. It was just something that the palette was giving me more product than I was expecting. Also, through slumps, watch Pan That Palette videos. Like I said, I will link Amber F down below. I have a playlist now of that full 2 years of Pan That Palette. We also have, and I definitely recommend not just Pan That Palette videos, but full playlist, so you can see the ups and downs. It's really interesting to see the waves of like, dislike, because it's going to happen. Like I said, I had 1 month or 2 months where I was like absolutely loving the palette, another month where I hated it, I was so tired of it. And then whenever, especially I think around fall, summer, that because I feel like, or not fall, summer, spring, summer, I feel like the Modern Renaissance palette really lends itself to winter and fall season. Spring, summer, I was getting real tired of it, but fall, summer is where I was living in it. Yeah, that's just how it was happening. So it's interesting to see those different things. I'm also going to try and link a couple of other people, like I know Panning and Stuff, Rebecca from Panning and Stuff, and other people. I'm going to try it to find, I can't remember off the top of my head, but try and find other panners who actually use their palettes from start to finish. I think it's a nice motivator to do that, especially if that's what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to just use a palette as much as possible for a year, other people will lend themselves probably better to you. But for me, since I want to start a palette and then finish a palette, those people that are actually doing it and succeeding at it are very helpful as well. So yeah, and then the next thing, of course, is, oh, and then Instagram's a great place for it too. The project pan porn, all of that sort of stuff is really a good place to look at some successes as well. It's not going to be in videos, and they're not really able to talk about in depth like their feelings and everything, but you still get to see some nice palette, you know, some nice pictures of progress and finishes, some of them finishes as well. And then the last tip I have is stick to your goals. If you are setting well, okay, I have two different tips. One, stick to your goals. Two, don't let your goals make you miserable. Change them if you need to. Reflect a little bit. I think this whole thing is about reflecting. Personally, I love panning a palette. I love seeing it from start to finish. It feels so great. Sometimes it feels a little torturous, but at the end it feels rewarding to me. I like having that that feeling, that thought that I finished a product, that it didn't go to waste. I feel accomplished. I feel like I know a palette really well. And yeah, I love that. So I stuck to my goals because I knew it was important to me, and that was important. However, if you have a massive eyeshadow palette collection and you're trying to pan a 35 eyeshadow and you realize that, and you're a slow panner, like I'm a really slow panner, I didn't realize it. I know some people will use the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette in 6 months from start to finish, and they're good. It took me 2 years, so that's, you know, another story. But if you have a massive collection and you're feeling like you are neglecting your collection, and this is no longer suitable for you and you're halfway through the year, stop it. Just don't. Just know, like, take whatever you've learned and apply that to your buying or your eyeshadow collection or whatever it is. Apply it and make the change. Go ahead and use your other eyeshadow palettes that you've spent your hard-earned money on. Don't let it go to waste. Always do what feels right to you. But I do think that starting a pan palette is going to be is very helpful and enlightening, and yeah, I think that it can be useful to lots of people. But again, it's a choice, and if you want to do it, then you should. If you don't want to do it, then you don't have to. But just know that the products take a really long time to use up. If you are panning, which I'm assuming you're panning because you're watching this video, hello, how are you doing? But yeah, if you're panning an eyeshadow, just know it takes a long time, and you don't need 1,000 bronze eyeshadows. If you want 1,000 bronze eyeshadows, then have 1,000 bronze eyeshadows, but you don't need it. So yeah, it's one of those things that I think it's a really important learning experience if you would like to do it. If you don't, no worries. But yeah, anyways, I think that's it. I don't know how to wrap up this video other than those are my tips and tricks for picking a palette and panning a palette, and I hope this helps. And more than anything, watch those pan that palette videos. They're really, really helpful, especially full playlists. Whenever you're in a slump, it just picks you up real quick. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know any tips and tricks you have for me or for anyone else out there watching. I think it's helpful to hear that other people struggle. There's ups and downs, and that's okay. And yeah, anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good day. Bye.